The ball was flooded with the warm light of crystal chandeliers, the reflections of which played on the golden walls, creating an atmosphere of solemnity and significance of the moment. There was a light scent of expensive perfumes and champagne in the air. The guests, including politicians, celebrities, and influential businessmen, sat at tables covered with snow-white tablecloths, their glasses sparkling under the soft lighting. It was the annual gala evening of freedom and honor, held at the luxurious Beverly Wilshire Hotel in Los Angeles. The main purpose of the event is to support wounded veterans, but this year something special awaited the guests. On an elevated stage framed by heavy velvet curtains of deep blue, stood the host of the evening, a retired four-star general. His voice, full of emotion and respect, told stories of the resilience and courage of soldiers, many of whom sacrificed everything. President Donald Trump was sitting in the front row. His usually confident expression turned thoughtful, as if he was absorbing every word. The audience applauded, but the atmosphere remained routine. The usual speeches, approving nods, the exchange of polite smiles. The evening went according to the usual scenario until the presenter paused. He cleared his throat, looked around the room, and said, "There is a special guest among us today. A man who has seen things that most of us can't even imagine, and he lived to tell about it." The hall instantly froze. The conversations died down. The glasses were carefully placed on the tables. Even Trump leaned forward, sensing the change in the air. Sergeant Lucas Barrett, the general continued, served 2 tours of duty in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. He was awarded the Purple Heart for injuries sustained in an ambush near Kandahar. But today he will tell us something more than just a story about the war. Meet the real American hero. A tall, powerfully built man in his 50s came out from behind the scenes. His step was firm, but there was a slight limp in his gait, a mute witness to the trials he had endured. His suit fit flawlessly, but it couldn't hide the stiffness of his movements. Barrett stopped at the microphone, adjusted the stand, looked around the room, lingered on the president, and spoke. "I am grateful to you for being here," he began in a flat but full voice. "I know that such events help veterans, raise funds, and give us support. But I also know that sometimes it's easy to forget what's behind those words." The hall remained in tense silence. He inhaled, looked from one face to the other. "I'm not saying this bitterly," he continued. "I'm saying this because I was there. I've seen what war does. I've seen what she takes away from people. I saw those who didn't come home." A heavy silence hung in the air. Barrett looked down, then up again. "One of those days when I was in the hospital, not knowing if I would be able to walk again, I did the only thing I could." He smiled slightly, as if the memory warmed him. "I wrote a song." The audience shuddered in surprise. Barrett pulled a folded and well-worn piece of paper out of his pocket. "It's not about me," he explained. "It's about those who couldn't be here today, about those who died too soon, about my brothers." He nodded to the pianist, who was sitting in the shadows by the wall. The first sad chords spread through the hall, like an inaudible sigh filled with longing and memory. Barrett closed his eyes, inhaled, and began to sing. His voice was low, firm, but trembling with emotion. Every word penetrated the hearts of the listeners, causing goosebumps. As soon as the last note faded into the air, the hall froze. The silence continued endlessly. Then a burst of applause. People stood up from their seats, some clenched their fists, some wiped their tears. It wasn't just gratitude, it was something deeper. But in the midst of all this, one person remained motionless. President. His hands were clasped, and his expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, he stood up, and he did something that no one expected. He took a step towards the stage. His steps were unhurried, filled with meaning. Barrett was looking right at him. The cameras clicked, capturing this rare moment. Trump extended his hand. Lucas hesitated for only a second, then shook it firmly. Their handshake was long, filled with something that cannot be expressed in words. Then Trump put his other hand on his shoulder. A tense silence fell in the hall. "They will never be forgotten," the president said quietly but clearly. Barrett squeezed his hand and nodded slightly. It wasn't just a gesture, it was a promise. Trump released his grip and turned to the audience. His expression had changed. There was something deep in it now, something real. He started applauding, and the hall exploded with applause again. The next day, the footage from the evening filled the internet. The video of Barrett's song went viral on social media, television, and newspapers. People commented, shared their memories, and told their stories. Veterans, families of fallen soldiers, thousands of people who used to feel forgotten, now knew that their voices had been heard. But for Barrett, it was just beginning. He received a letter from the mother of a dead soldier who had once been in his unit. Her words were full of gratitude. "I haven't heard my son's voice since he left, but last night I heard it in your song." Lucas knew he couldn't stop. He found an organization that helps veterans through music. The next day, he called them, because the stories of the dead should not be forgotten. And one song turned into a whole movement.